Dave Steck awesome? Yes. Okay. How many of you will be joining us for that event? Just by a show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just wanted to see who's going to be joining Dave and I for that event. That's all. Just get an idea. Okay. And if you haven't handed in the paperwork, just make sure before, whenever, you get it to our folks in the back, okay? All righty. Well, I tell you why I'm excited. Remember I told you, I asked the question, do you have contacts or do you have connections? Okay, so a couple years ago, one of my good friends, another one of my mentors, someone I rely on a lot and we share valuable insight and information, is David Knorr. And he was the one who shared with me years ago. Am I not on? Oh, yeah, okay. So anyway, his name is David Knorr. He is from Atlanta, Georgia. And I think I'm pretty good at staying in touch. I think I'm pretty good leveraging technology, and I know a few people. And David's doing things, just at a whole nother level in terms of automation and social media and social networking. It's truly amazing. Here's the analogy I'll give you, and this is literally, you know how you're driving a Honda Accord? I mean, you could go down the road at 60 miles an hour, 70 or whatever. It's a car. Then you're on the right side of the road is a Ferrari going down the road at 240 miles an hour. Same road, you're just going to accomplish a whole lot more. So let me ask you this, seriously, if you could take an extra week or 2 weeks off a year, would that be of any interest to any of you? Okay, so David teaches tips and tricks and all this technology stuff so you're just more automated, okay? And we'll show you before the end of the day some stuff so you can literally take that extra week or 2 weeks off a year. The other thing is, how many of you guys want more leads and more traffic and be more positioned as the authority in your industry so you can dominate and get more revenue? So David's going to talk a lot about some of those type of things, okay? He is the author of the new book. It just came out this week, Relationship Economics. It would not be surprising to me to see this on the New York Times bestseller in the next couple of weeks and couple of months, okay? And transform your most valuable business contacts into personal and professional success. His clients include KPMG, Disney, Cisco Systems, Cox, Emory University. I can sit here and go read them on and on. I guess the best thing I can tell you, I have access to some of the best minds in the world. I go to David to understand some of the technology and the social networking and all that kind of stuff. I am really happy he is here today. If you guys can give a standing ovation to Mr. David Knorr, I really appreciate that. Let's give him a big round welcome. Come on, you guys can do a little better than that. All right, David. All right. Yeah, David Knorr. Yeah, Dave, they can hear you fine. Yeah, David.
Great.
David had some issues getting here, so we're doing it via the web, but it's the next best thing. So go ahead, Dave. We appreciate you.
Larry, I appreciate you guys having me. Sorry I can't be out in the beautiful area with you guys, but I appreciate the time. And my goal in the next hour or so that we have together is really share with you some best practices and leveraging, in identifying, building, leveraging, nurturing relationships to help you get things done. As Larry mentioned, our clients are kind of somewhat of who's who of corporate America, but I deeply believe in that relationships are between individuals. And end of the day, it's not a company-to-company relationship, but an individual to an individual. So my goal is again, to help you really understand that your offline networking, the functions you attend, the people you meet, the people you have coffee and lunch with, has to be very congruent, has to be very consistent with your online networking.
Hey, David?
Yeah?
So I want them to hear you clearly. I'm wondering if your headset is either too far or too close or something. Maybe slow down. I don't know. Are you guys hearing him clearly? Not as clearly.
Is that any better?
Much better.
Great.
Okay. Thank you.
So what again, the goal is to make sure your offline networking and relationship building is very consistent with your online. So let's go ahead and go through. I have a high-level presentation I want to share with you, some ideas that we're actually going to go through, and I'm going to show you some technology tools, some websites. Larry asked me, can you just share with them what is it that you do? How do you do it? And let me, that's my goal. I'm going to pause periodically because I can't see you. Larry's my eyes and ears. So if you have questions when I pause, by all means, please ask. Also, please understand that we're trying to squeeze in what I typically do with clients over a full day or a 2-day session into this hour. So strap on your seatbelt and here we go. Now, one of the things that I do and what I love to doing is speaking at various functions, keynotes, industry associations. And, you know, I'm blessed to meet a lot of very different kinds of people, a lot of very different kinds of industries. But one thing that absolutely they have in common is that it presents some of this content. Most people are thinking, well, I'm not doing half that stuff. And I consistently get a very, very specific set of questions, comments, issues. So over 100 keynote speeches that has taken me to Dubai in United Arab Emirates 4 times this year. Before that, China. Before that, South Africa, and certainly throughout North America. Is how do I proactively stay in touch, right? I know relationships are important. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough bandwidth. So how do I, and again, the key word here is proactively, how do I leverage technology to save time? As Larry mentioned, I think we're all pressed for bandwidth. We're all pressed for time. I don't know about you, but I have 2 small children. How do I, not sacrifice spending quality time with them and really watching them grow because I'm buried trying to do all the things we're all trying to do. I really believe we're products of the advice we take. And one of the recommendations one of my mentors has given me is that wealth is discretionary time. You can always make more money, but you'll never be able to make more time. So technology is a great asset. It cannot become the replacement. You cannot abdicate your relationships to technology. But technology, as I'm about to prove to you, can be an amazing enabler to really help you save time. How do I monetize my most valuable relationships? Most of us go out there and have coffee visits and lunch meetings, and we attend industry functions, and we visit with a lot of people. What I don't want you to do is confuse vibration with forward motion. What I don't want you to do is confuse the busy work with, am I moving my relationships, my key relationships, forward to some place, to some valuable destination, if you will, right? And again, I don't want you to misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not talking about manipulating people. I'm not talking about only doing for those who do for you. But if you think about relationships, there's 2 camps. There's relationship kind of creation, and there's relationship capitalization. And I don't want you to, build a ton of relationships, but really not have a whole lot to show for it. And I'll talk more about that in a second. How do I effectively expand my portfolio of relationships? Philosophically, I believe beyond your educational foundation, beyond your professional pedigree, your most valuable asset, and Larry was kind enough to send me some background information of the people in the audience, whether you're an entrepreneur or a speaker or an internet marketer or whatever, regardless of how you got to that location this weekend, I believe your most valuable asset is your portfolio of relationships. So how you effectively expand, the broader that portfolio, the broader your influence footprint, the broader your social reach, if you will. And as respectful as I can be, if you keep hanging out with the same group of people that's as far as you're going to get. So I talk a lot about the diversity of your relationships, the quality of your relationships, and how do you consistently look to expand that portfolio. How do I develop highly personalized communication in an environment where people are asking for more interactive, more engaging, and how do I make sure those are more impactful? That's a beautiful part of what technology can do. Larry right there is masterful at one of the first time I saw a video email or an audio email. Who says it has to be in text? If you can capture an audio or video email and send it to them, most people would like to see you. Most people would like to hear you. Most people would like to see you in a highly engaging fashion. And so we're going to talk a lot about, years ago, my career took me down the path of one-to-one marketing. A guy named Peppers and Rogers, Don Peppers, Martha Rogers, are grandparents of this idea that you and I buy, things very differently or buy different things at Home Depot. So why do they market to all of us the exact same way? Well, because it's cheaper. But if you can manage, if you can find a way to highly personalize that communication, you're going to be a lot more effective. So let me pause here. Other questions, other things you can think of when it comes to, your most valuable business relationships?
Nope. Okay. They're good. You can keep on going.
So I want to talk to you about this kind of ecosystem. If you really believe what I said, which is you need to broaden your base of really valuable relationships, there's several fundamental things we want to talk about. We're going to think through. Number one, how do you put yourself in a position to meet a diverse and a very quality level of people? Again, you can do this offline with events you attend, with functions you choose to participate in, and you can do this online. And I'm going to show you both. How do I capture, once I meet somebody, take that room right now. I believe, as does Larry, that room alone could become a big asset to each other. You already have something in common. How do you, when you get somebody's business card, then what? Or you get somebody's information, then what? Critical to capture it electronically, because now I'm going to show you there's a lot more you can do electronically, and then which includes some sort of a nurture or drip campaign or drip interactions. I don't know about your particular business, but mine is event-driven. By that I mean they may not need me today, tomorrow, next week, or next month, but something's going to trigger where they're going to need me. And I want to be in the right place at the right time that they think of me when that latent pain, when that latent need arises. So if I've added value in every interaction, when a need for a social networking coach, when a need for a business relationship mentor comes up, that's when they think of me, right? And certainly, number four, how do I add value? Both Larry and I deeply believe in every interaction you need to add so much value to every interaction that all they're thinking is, man, look at all the value I'm getting before I engage this person. Imagine what would I get if I started working with them, right? You want to become an object of interest. You have to become, you want to elevate yourself above the noise. You have to become someone that they look forward to receiving information from. If you think about newsletters, most people unsubscribe from a newsletter because it's absolutely all about self-promotion. Let me tell you all about me. Again, as respectful as I can be, the people who get your newsletter seldom care about you. Seldom care about, let me tell you what speaking I'm doing, or what, here's a new product. Well, that's great, but what are you doing to add value? What are you doing to add tips, techniques, best practices? How can you make my life easier and make me want to stay engaged? Make me want to, again, not only not unsubscribe, but look forward your newsletters, your promotions, your events, whatever it is that you may be doing, right? That's all about value-based. And here's the part that most people don't do. For the book that Larry showed you, for the book that's coming out now, I interviewed 1,000 managers, directors, executives in a broad base of industries. Every single one of them agreed that relationships are important. Nobody measures it. Nobody quantifies it. Nobody says, what's my return on involvement? What's my return on influence? So one of the things I talk about is there's three types of networkers. You may want to write this down. Number one, givers. God bless Mother Teresa, right? They give altruistically. They give because they get this enormous value from giving. Well, it's great, but you know what? Most of us can't afford to simply just give. We have something called a mortgage. Next is takers. And I know we've all met this type. Have you noticed the only time they call is when they want something? Right? My least favorite is people looking for a job. You got a job? I'm going to need a job. You got a job? You know anybody who's got a job? Hey, let me send you my resume, and you forward it to everybody you know. What happens when they find a job? Right? They stop the networking. They forget everybody who helped them get there till 3 years from now when they call you back. What do you think they want? So how likely are you to help them? I actually call them on them. I'm sorry, and let me pick on Larry. Larry, what happened? When was the last time? What happened to the introductions I made for you 3 years ago? Say what, son? I was joking. I said, let me pick on Larry while he's there. Well, what happened to the introductions I made for you years ago? Or what? When? And Larry's the furthest from this case. But takers only think of themselves and only reach out when they need something. The last one, so we talked about givers, we talked about takers, and I'm hoping you're not one of those. The last one is investors. Those who genuinely believe relationships are an investment, and just like a bank account where you cannot deposit $100 and expect to withdraw 1,000, you have to constantly think, what can I do to add value? How can I become an asset to others? Because when I make those deposits, when I add value, it's going to become a heck of a lot easier for me to ask for a withdrawal. It's going to become a lot easier for me to ask, Larry, will you help me get the message out about this book if I've invested, if I've given, right? So it's critical that you prioritize your most valuable relationships. When I work with executives, I ask them a very simple question. Who are your 50 most strategic relationships? And then you be quiet. And most people can count on one hand or two. Here's a customer, maybe here's an employee for some of my clients, here's a board member, here's maybe some suppliers. But anything beyond a dozen or so, it actually takes some analytical skills. That's what I want you to start thinking about, is a return on your relationship investments. And again, that is applicable as much online in how much I spend on LinkedIn and Jigsaw and Zoom Info and Second Life versus what kind of return am I getting on those relationship investments. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about the first one, diverse and quality relationships. This has to become your number one priority. And by that I mean you have to get very succinct about, on the left-hand side of your screen, what's an ideal customer for me? I don't believe you can afford to date everyone, right? Who are you trying to date? Who are you trying to attract? An ideal customer, again, if you're dealing B2B, is typically a company. Within that company, or if you're dealing in a B2C environment, the next is an ideal buyer profile. What kind of an individual, what kind of a person is going to have the kinds of problems, the kind of issues on one side, and don't go into every situation thinking people are damaged. Also think about upside. Who else could benefit from this enhanced productivity, efficiency, effectiveness, value add that I'm going to bring? The next thing I need you to think about is an ideal relationship profile. Let me give you an example. If faith is critical to you, and it's critical to your long-term liking and long-term working with someone, yet you meet somebody who doesn't give a flying leap about any of it, is that really going to be a transaction, a short-term transaction? And if that's the case, that's fine. Or is it going to be a long-term transformation? Because a lot of profitability in any business comes from that longevity. It comes from working with that same client over some period of time. You have 1 in 2 chance of getting business from an existing client who knows you, who likes you, who trusts you, who's had a good experience with you, and 1 in 15 to 1 in 30 from trying to get new business. Now, I have never met a business that doesn't need new business, but if 60 to 70% of your business is not coming from referrals, it's not coming from repeat business, it's not coming from upsell, cross-sell opportunities to your existing client base, and about 20 to 30, maybe up to 40% from new business, you really need to look at not just what are you doing, but why. And are you giving them an opportunity to continue to engage you over some duration of time? I've been going to the same dentist for 20 years. Do I have other choices in dentists? Absolutely. Wayne Marshall, who I think is there. Wayne, are you there?
He wasn't able to make it, but we have mentioned his name for those of you.
Yeah, Wayne Marshall is a great
asset.
I've been working with Wayne for the last year and a half. Great guy, right? So you want to be able to work with someone over a longer duration than any just one transaction, one event. The other thing, so if you believe that again, 50, 60, 70% of your business should come from referrals, the other thing that would be really smart for you to think about is what's an ideal referral source for me? 70% of our business comes from referrals, other consulting firms, attorneys, accountants, investment bankers. I spent 6 years at a private equity firm, private equity guys, people who see others who are having revenue problems, people who are trying to really raise the bar on their social networking strategy. So you have to be very succinct about those ideal profiles. On the left-hand side, will drive you then to the right kinds of activity, the right kinds of action items that allows you to really focus on that type of profile, such as how do I seek out new events? How do I get into the difficult to get into, higher profile events? How do I attend? And by the way, most people gather for two fundamental reasons, content and community. How do I engage others with interest? And how do I disengage when appropriate? Case in point, I went to Emory University here in Atlanta. Emory University is part of something called the Atlanta Business School Alliance. So all the area business schools, they have their own alumni kind of functions, but they also pool their resources. So on one website, I can see Harvard, Kellogg, Chicago, on and on, all the different events. Well, I didn't go to Harvard, but because I went through Emory, I can attend the Harvard Business School Executive Breakfast Series, where not only do they bring world-class speakers and executives, so they just most recently was president of Ford for North America, who talked about what they're trying to fundamentally change in their business because of the problems or the challenges they're in. They brought in the chairwoman of Time Magazine. They've brought in, countless business leaders to talk about some really interesting stuff. I go to those events religiously because think about it, really good content, but also think about who shows up at these events. You meet, again, if my focus is business to business, you meet a lot of the McKinsey types, the Bain, the Boston Consulting Group. I recently met the CEO of a hip-hop record label company here in town. Now, great guy, but we just honestly didn't have a whole lot in common. So my last comment, you've got to be as savvy to disengage as much as you do engage. Again, a lot of what I'm sharing with you is just as applicable online as it is offline. Let me pause. Questions, comments, insults, anything on what we've talked about so far?
You guys have any insults for Dave? There's one or two. No, I'm kidding. Any questions? Any comments?
Well, yeah, some of these things is, I know what ICP,
Yeah, we're gonna probably need the
IRP is, but a ideal referral
the mic?
source.
Oh. So basically, you want to know what an ideal referral source is?
Yeah.
You want to, okay.
Okay.
So for
if
David, give an
Yeah.
example for you, for his, now David's going after Fortune 1000 companies and large industry associations. David, share with them who you're...
Yeah, so the question as I heard it is give us an example to tell us more about the ideal referral source. So number one, you really have to think about it in that order, right? So what's an ideal customer for you? What's an ideal buyer? What attributes about that buyer in terms of your relationship are you seeking? And then referral source is a path of least resistance, or what I call kind of fastest path to cash. By that I mean, who can walk you in to that ideal buyer? If you think about it, and if you heard how Larry described my business, my clients are Fortune 500, Fortune 1000. So that's the ideal customer, is a large company who has the kinds of problems we solve. An ideal buyer is a division president, or it's a VP of sales, or it's a chief people officer, chief talent officer, right? My referral sources that then are individuals who work with those types of buyers. So case in point, there is a consulting firm here in town that all they focus on is strategy execution, right? You've all seen companies come up with really good ideas. Well, there's no shortage of those good ideas. It falls apart when they try to execute them. So these guys, all they do is they go in and they roll up their sleeves and try to help the company execute. Well, they know that we deeply believe in that success of that execution comes in the relationships of those change agents, the relationships of people who can make change happen. So they bring our team in to be in essence, the business relationship, the social networking coaches within that environment. This isn't about ego to me. It's about doing really good work. So we've gone in as part of their team. They've introduced us into their clients. And I've built a very strong referral relationship with people who can walk me in to those ideal buyers that I want to work with. So you have to think about who else works with, who else in that value chain works with the kinds of customers, the kinds of buyers you want to work with. Does that make sense?
So it's basically who can help you meet the person you want to meet.
Yes.
I'm going to go one step further. Who can walk you in? Not just meet. Meet. A lot of people toss meeting over the wall, right? Don't introduce me over an email. Pick up the phone, call both of us, invite me to a coffee, and introduce us in person. Who can walk you in? Because getting in is half the battle. Who can walk you in?
Thank you.
If you're succinct about what's on the left-hand side, this will make your networking, this will make your relationship building that much more effective because you're crystal clear about who am I trying to date, about who am I trying to attract. As we go through the day, as we go through the session, those will make more sense.
Okay, that sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
My pleasure. Let me move on.
We're going to move on. He's got a lot of stuff to go
So
cover.
this is an example. Here in Atlanta, and again, I'm trying to give you ideas, but then really bring it down to where rubber meets the road. This is an example. Here in Atlanta, we have something called Women in Technology. I get their email announcements. If you can see right here in the middle of the screen, remember what I said. People gather for two reasons, content and community. I look at, okay, there's a guy named David Noor who's going to talk about relationship economics, and in particular, this idea of technology enablers for strategic relationship success really jumps out. I'm thinking this might be an interesting content, and people who show up are going to be probably interesting people I want to meet. So Larry knows me. I leave very little to chance. By that I mean a lot of people kind of haphazardly figure out what events they want to attend. I have a master calendar in my office. I went and bought one of those really big kind of calendars that I put on a wall. Beginning of the month, I start mapping, beginning of each month, I map out all the events that I know of that are coming up that month. And I'm always looking at where can I go for really good content, where can I go to meet really interesting people. And this is an example of when I see this, I automatically go ahead and put it on my calendar so I know not to schedule things around it. And I'm very intentional about which events I attend because it's always a trade-off. If you're not trading off your family time and your personal time, you're trading off with an opportunity cost of attending something else that same day that could be much stronger. Number two, I try to attend one new function a month. Case in point, Andy Young is a former Atlanta mayor and a UN ambassador. He recently did an event at the High Museum of Art here in town on this whole idea of Rwanda rising. He's very active in Africa, and Rwanda, as you may know, went through the genocide. But they've recently elected, now several years, they've elected a new president, and it's amazing of what's happening there. So if a former mayor and a UN ambassador is going to come and talk about Africa, take one wild guess. It's going to be probably really interesting content, and you're going to meet some really interesting people. And I was dead on. There were about 300 people there, cream of the crop of Atlanta, and people who really understand this topic and really understand Andy, and it was a fascinating topic to start with. So if you push yourself to go to new events, here's another one for you. Again, in my industry, this is called the Association for Corporate Growth, ACG. It's a global organization. And look at the last event. General Russell Henry came and talked about leadership and his lessons from Katrina. So you've got to really think through what events are coming up, what's of interest, why and how would I go. Look at some of these other people. Chief Operating Officer of Home Depot, President and CEO of Global Payments. This guy sold Per Se Technology for hundreds of millions of dollars. So again, being very intentional about what events you choose to attend and really pushing yourself to constantly attend interesting events will help broaden your footprint of contacts. Business cards. This is a critical one, and I'm counting on you picking this up and practicing it as early as the next event you go to. This is my business card. Whenever I get a card, number one, please take a minute to look at it, because I've given people cards, and the first question is, where's your office again? Right? Well, if you look at the card, the address is on there, right? Or my website is on there. So don't ask where the information is already in the card. Take a second to look in the card. I then immediately turn it over, and on the back, I capture 5 pieces of critical information. Number one, date and event. Most of us grab business cards, and we have no idea where we met this person. Right? So date and event. I met him at a Larry Benet event on September 14th. Visual. We're a very visual society. Capture something that reminds you of the person, right? She was, wearing a red suit. He was wearing a really good-looking pink tie. I really liked his glasses. Whatever the case is, capture something visual about the individual. I talk about the three circles of relationships. You, a healthy self, right? Your personal and your professional, really integrating those three. So this three-circle concept.